In order to remove the solenoid and maintain the solenoid on an LV1.6, you'll need a very small Phillips screwdriver. This is a Phillips head 0. First thing you need to do is remove the 2 retaining screws. Take both of those retaining screws out. And that will remove the solenoid. Place the solenoid to one side for now. At this point we can inspect the solenoid gasket. Worth noting, on the solenoid gasket, the gasket can should only be inserted one way. There's a small bump adjacent to this front mounting hole, solenoid mounting hole, and there's a matching notch in the gasket here. These two must be placed together, can't be placed upside down or backwards. We're placed to one side. Should not be any need to remove the manifold. If you do, you need to remove the 3 mounting screws. Mounting screws can come out. Gently lift the manifold away from the body. You can inspect the gasket on the bottom. You can see this one sat nicely in the channel, base of the manifold. No need to apply any grease to this at all. Make sure it's flat and it's not been pinched anywhere. Reattach that to the 3 mounting screws. These don't need to be over tightened. Screw them in finger tight. Manifold attached. Can reinsert the gasket, again noting the notch in the pocket and notch in the gasket. And that can be placed down as manifold maintenance. We can now take a look at the solenoid. The LV1.6, the solenoid can be dismantled for any maintenance. Access to the spool is from the rear. We will need to separate the 2 halves of the solenoid in order to push the spool out. First thing to do is again take a PH0 Phillips screwdriver and remove the 2 very small cap screws. Just allow the cap to be removed. The very small gasket sat in there, no need to remove that, it can just stay in the cap. Here we can see the end of the spool. These clips now need to be pushed off. Use a pick to very carefully work the 2 clips off. This goes to the side, turn it over, the clip can be pushed off the other side. Obviously being very careful not to stab yourself with the pick. Once both those clips have been removed, solenoid is split into 2 halves. You've got the main body and then you have the pilot section. Don't want to take any part of the pilot section apart at this point. The rear section is a coil, that's non-user serviceable, coil section. There is a piston here. This is a piston that moves the spool I recommend not taking that out as it has a lip seal in there. It can be quite difficult to place back in. So just inspect that, make sure that everything looks correct and there's nothing sat on the gasket, a very small gasket around the outside. Place that to one side. You can now take main body and spool. Note which way you take out the spool. You push it out from the back, try and keep everything lined up the same way so you can reinsert it the same way. So just want to inspect if there is any buildup of debris inside here, if there is any dirt or swarf or anything that's entered externally, then that can just be wiped off. Again, inspect and use a microfiber to wipe off any excess grease. If the solenoid is leaking for any reason, then it will require a new spool. These seals are really non-user serviceable, so just a new spool assembly can be placed inside the main body if required. Reassemble. Small amount of grease on all seals. Work those around. Again, only Planet Eclipse grease to be used in here. Very, very carefully slide the spool back in until it's sitting flush. And then we can go ahead and reassemble the solenoid. So it can only be assembled one way. We need to hold the two halves together while clips are applied. Slide the clips into place. Make sure they go all the way on. Push them all the way down into place. We need to reattach the end plate, taking note of the orientation. The small hole at the top of the solenoid body needs to be adjacent to the D shape at the top, not the closed D at the bottom, but the open D. This air that comes through the small hole needs to come down into this channel. So it's very important that you have them in this orientation. Can be dropped on there. And the very small screws reinstalled. Don't over tighten each one of these on assembly. Make sure they're both in loosely first and then just finger tight. Do not want to be over tightened. This point is also worth noting the positions of the flow controls. Factory position for flow controls is with both controls in a vertical or 12 o'clock position. Once that's all been reassembled, it can be reattached back to the body. And line up the mounting holes. Take the two long mounting screws and reattach solenoid. Again, don't over tighten any of the screws until everything's in place. And again, literally fingertip tight the solenoid. That's all that's required. That is maintenance on the LV1.6 solenoid manifold assembly.